everyone. Well, the panel is about the main topic is what's next in line for PC games. And unfortunately, I haven't been introduced face-to-face with the panelists, but hopefully after this panel, I will have a chance to learn more about them. We would like to cover today a couple of subtopics, so-called. The first one would be, how do we see actually the future of the cross-platform? How do we create the awareness for the developers and generate more quality games? And as well, what can we all do to give bigger, better support for the developers? So I would like to now ask the panelists to introduce themselves to the audience and tell just briefly what you guys are working on, what are, for example, the the biggest experiences you've had so far. What would you like to highlight in a way? So please start from here.
Hi everyone, my name's Tracy. I'm the CEO of Ansible Communications, which is a marketing agency. And I work at the moment predominantly in PC, helping bring games to market. And I'm working with some really cool people doing some VR multiplayer at the moment. I don't think VR has quite had its hit, but I think 2020 we're getting there. And so yeah, that's where my brain is at the moment.
Okay, hi. My name is Kimmo Kari, and most of you saw what I'm doing right now with FakeFish. So briefly, it was PC survival games is the main focus right now. I have been in this industry for a while. Roughly 40 games has been produced and launched, but probably the biggest highlight for me, or biggest production so far, is Ridge Racer Unbounded, title from to Namco Bandai with Bugbear Entertainment, and that was actually cross-platform to all consoles and PC. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Raimo Gratsev. I work for Ubisoft RedLynx as a lead gameplay programmer on an unannounced PC and console title. I can't really say much about that, but anyway, I bring hopefully some more of the programmer. I'm mostly focused on like actual just game development, so don't have much experience on the marketing side and like all the business decisions behind. But yeah, more the lower level game development stuff.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David. I'm the co-founder of a Switzerland-based indie game studio called Pinata Punch, and we are developing currently a game called Colorful Darkness. It's a hacking simulation wrapped inside a cinematic adventure. Highlights. I'm a software developer, game developer. I make games since childhood, but never considered it as a career until a few years ago. And that would be my highlight, actually, deciding to make it my career. Yeah.
Thank you.
And my name is Sébastien Bénard. I do video games. I'm a developer and a game designer at Motion Twin in France, and actually the second French guy on the scene. And we actually released recently Dead Cells, which is a kind of Roguevania kind of game. And we've been making games for 17 years now. We are quite an old company, even if Dead Cells is our very first PC and console titles. But we do have quite a long experience on making web and a few mobile games, so it's interesting to talk about cross-platforming and how it evolved since the early days of Flash. And so yeah.
Thank you very much. So if we're actually, it looks like the main interesting subtopic should be cross-platform in a way, which is also very important to Epic because I'm representing Epic. What are your opinions on future of cross-platform and what kind of great impact could have on the game industry ecosystem now? So What do you think, guys?
I may start here. We did have, as I said, quite a long experience at making cross-platform-ish kind of game, because we started 15 years ago, 17 years ago on PC, making web games on Flash, and we did, like any Flash developer, did have to survive the Flash collapsing, for good and bad reasons, because Flash used to be nice. It used to be nice. And so with the rise of mobile development, we did see new challenges on how to make games, especially because on mobile, by this time, you did have already a very low CPU. You did have very specific issues on touch things and touch controls. You don't have any right clicks or anything like this. So yes, we did approach the cross-platform thing. But for me, we did part away from the cross-platform actually today, because we were making cross-platform at PC and console and not PC and mobile anymore, because these are very different markets, and it's today it's really not about tools anymore, because we do have lots of useful as from Epic and Unity. You do have lots of tools to actually make mobile and cross-platform games, but the real challenge for us today is really to make a platform that fits these new markets, and they are very different. So making a PC game on Steam and console, and even between console and Switch and PS4 and mobile, it's such a different thing. So it's really not about the engine anymore today. I think it's really about making a game that fits these new markets.
Yeah, I would also argue that it would make a lot of sense to make a more sort of like collaboration with developers, because if we define cross-platform in such a way that is not porting the same way to another platform, so I mean that you can port pretty easily a PC game to console platforms and have a pretty simple same experience. But then if you think about mobile platforms, you could also make a sort of like cross-platform game that similar launch with the PC and console title, but then of course the game usually needs to be quite different on that platform. And usually these companies who are good in making PC mobile games are not so good at making mobile games. So I would think that more collaboration would be needed in that part. I can tell a short experience when previously I worked.
No, of course, share. It's all about experience, yes. Kind of like being relaxed and just talking about experiences, so all the audience hears about it.
Yeah, previously before FakeFish, I worked with rival games. And we had a nice IP from Robert Kirkman, Thief of Thieves, and we developed a PC game and also console version, and we also were with really limited resources also trying to develop a mobile game that would be really different, actually only sort of like a text-based game. But we really didn't have enough resources and perhaps expertise to really deliver it in the level we would hope for. But I think the idea was good. I just hope that the execution or resourcing would have been better to really deliver the mobile game. The mobile game, because the game, this is really narrative game. We had 2 script writers there and sort of like 5,800 lines of text so it would, and it's based sort of like a old comic series that you have this rich universe where you can sort of like be creative and find a lot of different angles to the same happenings and stories. So the idea was that the mobile game is totally different. We'll highlight the main characters in a sort of like different angle, have sort of like different background information, and also if you do something right in that game, it would also communicate that to the backend, to the PC game, and give you some help on the PC game, even though they are both sort of like standalone products. But there is this sort of like little sort of like cooperation happening in the backend side. So I think these type of things are too rare nowadays. That could be more.
Yeah. Okay. For us, cross-platform. Now I'm looking at you because I thought of what you said, that it doesn't. It's not the tools now that limit you, etc. This is very true. We're using Unity, and this is going to help us. But we're making a PC-first game, and for us, cross-platform, we try to turn this into an opportunity to turn one of our weaknesses actually into a strength. And I think I loved your talk, by the way, about the long tail, and yeah, we're all already thinking about that. Let me explain. So, 2 words actually: asymmetrical multiplayer. So in our game, in the context of our game, what players do, the core loop, right, would be you talk to people, you get information, you explore the world. So when you talk to people, you do social engineering, and you actually then hack systems that are all interconnected in the game world through terminals, typing Linux-like commands, etc. And it's very realistic. So publishers, when they look at our game, they say, yeah, that's a hardcore niche market, is great, but could you go on consoles? And we're like, people need a keyboard. You know, I mean, it's an essential part of our gameplay. It's in the DNA of the game to type commands like a nerd with a hoodie. You know. So we thought about this, and we're like, we're gonna stay. We want to be faithful to our core concept because people really like it. Like, players are eager to see our game, you know, out, and they want us to keep it difficult. And this realisticness is part of the game's difficulty. So when we think of cross-platform, we're thinking, okay, why not have people team up as a band of hackers, and some of them would carry guns or try to infiltrate, you know, a place, and others would be, so those could be on console, and on PC we could have players typing commands in terminals to open doors, disable cameras, hack robots, etc., etc. Did I mention it was a cyberpunk game? It's set in a cyberpunk universe, so you'll have a lot of stuff to hack. Yeah, so that's the answer on our side. It's a very design answer, but
yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It's a great answer anyway.
So I work for a big company, so obviously we want to release games on all the platforms that make sense. So especially traditionally, this obviously means that we try to release a game on all the consoles and then the PC. And then also on mobile side have it on the major mobile platforms. But I guess at the moment, one thing that is maybe changing this a little bit is maybe Nintendo Switch, because it's very much kind of in the middle. It's technically very close to mobile platforms, but then the controls and the experience is closer to traditional console platforms. And in the future, there will be a lot more projects that have to make some kind of decisions of like how do they approach that, because it seems like it's a big emerging platform, and that puts a lot of pressure on the tools and the engines and all that to make it possible to actually have a game running on like top of the line PC as well as Nintendo Switch with a 300 megahertz GPU. So yeah, that's I think very interesting, but obviously, yeah, we'll definitely want to have more shared experiences with all the different platforms.
I think you guys have a really huge challenge, because from a consumer, it's kind of magic and it's really complicated, your tools and what engines you're using, but honestly, I don't actually care about that part of it. As a consumer, I'm platform agnostic. I want what I've got in my living room or in my pocket to play the game that I want at that moment. And I think cross-platform, if we can begin to work more and more with getting things talking to each other, the person that wins is the consumer. And that really, really excites me. I think it's going to be a massive challenge marketing-wise, because to be suddenly your audience is on every platform, perhaps at launch. How do you deal with that? How do you scale with that? But from a pure gaming point of view, to be able to just have that instant access. I think that's much more what we're seeing and consumers want. And so I think cross-platform is going to be inevitable, and I want it yesterday. I think it's a brilliant thing because I don't understand how complicated it is.
You're right. It's, for example, talking about the Switch, recently they did port Doom on the Switch, and it's really some kind of change, some kind of shift when you can actually play games such as Doom on a portable device, which is like really amazing. And you're right, it's different from what the player wants, because they do want some kind of cross-platform thing, even if they don't call it this way. They just want all their favorite games with them together at any given time. And the thing is, for example, we are trying at least to port Dead Cells on mobile, which is like something we didn't announce officially, so please don't talk about it. But yes, we're experimenting with that, and you're right, because as a gamer, it feels really right to actually be able to play the game on mobile, but it makes the difficult part, it's not really, nowadays, it's not about technical things, it's really about making sure there is an actual market for this kind of game on this device, which is becoming different today, because especially with Fortnite coming to mobile, for example, or PUBG coming also to mobile, which is like something which is crazy today. And a few years ago, it wouldn't have been something. And it's really about making sure the game actually plays right and making sure there is an actual market for this. But you're right, because it's something that we can shake our hands and say, no, I don't want to go there, but it will happen eventually. So yeah, we just have to go there. And today we have all the technical tools to do that. It's just making sure that we actually think our game at the beginning with a few things like, okay, it might be touch control, so I won't have a right click. So it might be on a very small screen, so I can't afford to have small text on the screen, so not too much text on my screen. So you have to think about this a little bit earlier in making the game. And as a game designer, I think it's a good thing, because it allows you to make a good UI and good UX most of the time. But it's also quite a challenge, because some game can be really challenging to actually port on mobile on this skin. But as I said, I was talking about Fortnite and PUBG. That's something that wouldn't have been possible a few years ago. And now it's happening, and they actually do have a huge player base. So even Doom-likes and this kind of game actually do happen on mobile. So what not? Any kind of game should be there and could be there.
By the way, just a short thing. So the two of you mentioned and talked about the controls, and I guess that's pretty much the most limiting aspect of a game. How do we control the game, and then the consumers would expect a game to be out on every platform that has those controls available?
So overall, it looks like you guys all believe that there is a market there. So are you right now, for example, developing your games in cross-platform?
Yeah, as I said, we are trying to.
You are, but yes. Are you others like looking into as well?
We are prototyping, but I believe it counts as developing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, our timeline is to release the first player experience at first, but we're already prototyping the multiplayer. Yeah.
Just by the way, the Trials Rising, which is the next game coming from RedLynx early next year, is going to be the first Trials game coming on Nintendo Switch, and because that platform just felt like a really good place for that game.
Yeah, we have currently plans to launch games on all platforms, from mobile to Nintendo to PC and consoles. I've been now a while away from the console multiplayer, development scene, but back in the days when I was there was some technical limitations that I hope would go away someday. That you couldn't do a really cross-platform multiplayer game between the consoles. Technically, there is no reason why not, but I think the platform owners want to own the users, and you have these golden passports and whatever. So I feel that that's a bit stupid limitation, but let's see what happens in future.
You mean that the one platform owner wants to keep their players to them in their own?
For example.
That is Sony, who doesn't know.
And also, PS. Are you actually porting yourself and gonna? I mean, you said it's not official, but are you thinking of going standalone, etc.? Because I'm aware of companies such as Hatch here. They have a booth here who are. It's not just about porting from PC to mobile, but it's also about curating. So this company, for instance, wants to see themselves as the HBO, of those games. And what's interesting here is that it's. You would get to discover the games that made the effort to go there. So we're talking of an emerging market.
It's really when you make a game, in my opinion, you can think about cross-platform between PC and console, which is pretty much the same, because not only technically speaking, but it's a pretty kind of same player that you have differences, of course. Not saying everything is the same, but when you're talking about cross-platform, the real challenge for me is between mobile and whatever, and because it's really not about the technical things, it's really about the challenge of reaching your community, and it's also about this stupid thing of having a closed app store and this kind of things that will probably explode in a few years, hopefully. But it's really about addressing a market that works really in such a different way from PC. As I said, we did started on mobile and web, and we switched it to PC. It was like a really great relief for us. But it's very different. You don't address the store in the same way, because a game can be very, very successful on mobile and not at all on PC, and the opposite is also true. So there are two different, such different markets, that it's just not about porting the game, it's really about adapting the game and making sure that this experience is actually something that fits. And talking quickly about the Switch is a very interesting platform because it's the same console as a portable on-screen version. So when you make a game on Switch, you actually have to think these cross-platform things, and you have to think making sure that your game works on small devices and with touch controls if you want to take advantage of that. And if the player just dock the game, you have to switch instantly into traditional kind of gaming, which is, as a game designer, also very interesting, but that's also quite a challenge. But that's the same kind of challenge that you have to do if you go to mobile and PC at the same time, in my opinion.
So a couple of points from me, really, is the first thing, I work with a range of clients, and I would always say to them, yes, start in where your strongest market is at the moment, because cross-play isn't, cross-platform and cross-play isn't a huge thing, but start there and then try and go to every platform that you can, because there's a huge audience opportunity out there to discover stuff. And I know I was wondering how long it was going to take us to talk about sort of HBO models and Netflix for games, because I know we've talked a little bit already about cross-platform from the game point of view and from a consumer point of view, but I think everybody is wanting to be Netflix for games. I think there's only Netflix that can be Netflix for games, and they're only just dipping their toes into it. I think it's a very interesting conversation. And I think to go back to the consumer point of view, say you play FIFA, you're really only going to play FIFA. You might play a couple of other titles, and I want to play FIFA on whatever device. But if I'm the platform holder and you can only get FIFA from me, that's probably the darker part of the future of cross-platform that we'd go into, because then you're going, well, if you want this game, you can only purchase it from this particular place. So it's not necessarily about access on the platform itself, it's that where do you purchase these titles from? And if I'm the owner of FIFA, yes, I want you to buy it just from me. I don't want anybody else having my 30%. And then we're getting into, very different, complex retail markets, structure markets, e-commerce debates, and again, how you begin to unpickle that from a marketing point of view, I think is going to be a huge challenge as well. So it's interesting how these conversations start from a technical point of view and actually looking at where the customer is in their journey, not just how you play, but where you purchase from, I think is something else to look out for in the future. Because I'm not sure. I know I don't feel that Steam is the one point of contact for everybody anymore. And I think it's super interesting that really big developers are going, I'm not going to be on Google, I'm not going to be on Steam, I'm going to do things my own way. And you're like, wow, that's amazing and it's crazy. And you know, not everybody's going to have that opportunity. How we come to market, I think, is going to be just as important as what we're making.
And I would like to maybe come to the second topic here, which is about actually like creating awareness. How do you guys ensure to create awareness of your games? Is actually Steam nowadays like a good channel for you? Or, you know, should you use some own channels, maybe, I don't know, some own platforms, some pre-orders, how to use them effectively? Like, what are the tools that can help you gain awareness? What are you right now believing in and using?
We started with a bad idea. Actually, I mean, it was a good idea, but yeah. So let me explain. We thought initially that our game would do great if it was visible in the real life hackers community. You know, if it was if real hackers would say, "Oh, that game is pretty realistic," and yeah, this is what we do actually. Yeah. The problem with that approach is that I still think it's a good idea, marketing-wise, but for a specific purpose, which would be credibility. But I don't expect this anymore to bring us sales, because yeah, those are very different communities. So it's interesting how ideas that are, you mentioned like press reviews versus user reviews, and it's interesting how good ideas sometimes can give you good visibility, but won't actually convert into success. So we are maybe I will let you give your answer, but we're still figuring out. But we're going very organic, and we're trying to basically build a community of fans, and we believe hugely on word of mouth in our case. Yeah. So I mean, your topic was very where we're going actually.
Yeah, I could say something. Yeah, as we basically came to the conclusion that like most games are not really on just one platform, for example, just PC only. Basically, the only reason you're on one platform is maybe that you're just really tight on like resources. But otherwise, you will be on as many platforms as you possibly can. So you're not. If you're making a PC game, you will try to release it on the consoles and every single platform. Also, like, well, Ubisoft, we have our own Uplay as a storefront as well, as like all the games are also on Steam, and obviously then on PS4 and Xbox One and all that. And so basically, like, you wouldn't really focus any kind of marketing in like one platform either. So you will definitely be on Twitch, YouTube, all the different channels that there are. You will have to be on all of them. It's only if you're limited on resources that you might have to limit that.
Having experimented the different things, I'm quite traumatized by mobile, so sorry about that, guys. But for mobile, marketing is quite difficult. You know, I'm pretty sure that you know what I'm talking about, because of this 25 top thing, you have to be here, featured or not featured, and it's really difficult to exist without that. But it's very different from PC and Mac and console markets, because in this market it's all about making yourself visible, and you have tons of ways to do that. Today, for example, in Dead Cells, we did some very basic thing. Actually, we did send a huge amount of keys to very small streamers on Twitch at the very beginning of right before, maybe 2 weeks before the early access release, because the early access is almost a release, so It's really important to know that. So yes, we sent tons of keys to very small streamers right before the early access release, and because all these small streamers were actually playing the game, so it showed on Twitch, we had a few people from the medium Twitchers, larger ones, who asked us, can we have a key? And because these larger streamers actually showed the game, we had the big ones, the really big ones. So it really was, this is not some kind of strategy, magic strategy that you work all the time, but really do take care of the small ones, because they are not that used to receive a free key for a game. Most of the time they just don't, they are not on the list, so they don't get anything from the publishers or whatever. And if you just send them a key, sometimes it can turn into some kind of a nice long-term effect. Yes, about just a small thing about what you said about console. This is very paradoxal today, because when you're making a console game, the first thing they ask you is it possible to have exclusivity? Because even if it's cross-platform, even if it's the same game on all platforms, they don't care about the PC market, but making a console game, the first thing they will ask is, can we make this game exclusive on PS4, Switch, or Xbox? So that might be a good strategy if you really need money. But as you said, which is really right, you shouldn't limit your markets. You should, even if they're paying lots of money for getting you on PS4 only, on Switch only, or Xbox only, most of the time it's a better idea to just make sure that your game is on as many markets as possible. Because you, especially if you're a small team, you should not afford. You couldn't afford to actually limit yourself. So.
I think I'm so pleased to hear that story about influencers, because I'm a real believer in the power of influencers, not by just going to the person who has the most viewers and, you know, will give you a big shout out, but finding the right influencer for your game, and then who influences the influencers. That sort of ripple effect and the word of mouth effect is massively powerful. And I think we're going to get to a stage where as you said, you have a game and you're on most platforms, and from a marketing point of view, yeah, you either need a really big sink of resources to be able to support all of that, but another way is to build a community around a product and have a space where they all meet together regardless of platform that they're on. Maybe it's Discord, maybe it's you have a regular AMA on Twitch, maybe you have a Reddit channel or whatever it is. Wherever the most members of your community live their lives online, build it around them, build it where they are. And I think that then helps you manage a little bit more of your marketing, can help with discoverability. People will come in and see that hopefully you have a very healthy community, everybody's really excited. Whichever platform they're on, they're talking about the game and they're talking about you and your studio and your brand and why that's all really cool. And actually, that can be much more effective than paying on every platform and paying for that visibility.
Yeah, and totally agree. And like in my previous talk, I explained that we are not developing all our titles as open source projects, but I talk about the two and the one we are currently developing. So when you are developing the game with the community and the fans of that genre can contribute to that game, of course they are super happy, and they tell their friends, and then they find some influencers who start posting videos and stuff. So that has happened to us like twice already. So it seems to be really working concept that really start to developing the game with the community that you have.
So it looks like we all believe that the influencers community, everything is very important for the game to be successful. But I think the question, like for me, would be, so how do we actually measure the KPIs? You know, what is the indicators? So I've sometimes heard like, there is no way to measure the KPIs rightly because it's very individual. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's something that is really hard to measure because, especially on mobile also again, but because it's very closed on all the information usually I'll say that, your presence on the store and how it turns into sales. It's really difficult to actually have a real number and real figures on that. On PC, I just suggest to go on Steam Spy, which is because even I hope it survives, but it should, because it's really a very important tool for most game developers today. But you have ways to actually track your visibility on Twitch, on YouTube, on how much streaming time did you have, and if you compare that to your own data, you can actually see if it transforms into something, if it's related to some kind of news in your game or whatever, some change you probably made or something. So yes, so something which is very organic, so very, by definition, very hard to actually analyze. Sometimes you have no reason for something to happen, just some random big streamer just shows your game and suddenly it explodes. And so it's very, you cannot get good listens from that, except that I was lucky. So that's something which is really difficult. But the thing is, it's not because you cannot analyze it that you shouldn't try to provoke it, to create this effect. And the ripple effect that you were talking, I was searching for, this is the word. Making sure that you actually address even very small people and not important in some way people in your core community, like the hacker community, and not exactly core gamers, but the real target of this game. I think it's the key, and it's not something that you can measure and say, okay, this operation, this marketing thing was a success or wasn't, except if the game totally fails, of course. But it's difficult to measure. But most of the time, I can guarantee if you don't do that, it's difficult to have any kind of visibility, except if you have a strong marketing power, like Ubisoft, for example. In such a case, you have a reputation. So when you release a game, everybody will be just looking at it because it's a Ubisoft game. But when you're a smaller team, you have to rely on different tactics, and you should do pretty much everything you can do, including talking to streamers and addressing your community.
I have to say that I don't perhaps believe that KPIs are really useful. KPIs are meant to be the key metrics.
Yeah.
They tell a bit like self-evident stuff that you can see already. That okay, you can see it like without even the KPIs that is your game successful or not. But if you want to have, if you want to really want to learn something from the metrics, I think one should go pretty deep. Most likely even develop their own metrics tools, which we once did back in the days when I was in a company in France, and then we had this metaphor of like if you are like a hotel manager, and then you have like a really big hotel, and then you want to see that how your customers are like doing in the hotel. Where do they like to be in the restaurant or in the cafeteria or what such thing? You cannot go with the camera in their rooms. So you have some the metrics are like the tools to you to see what the players are doing in your game, where they like to be, where they don't like to be, what is broken, what is not broken, and that's how you can make your game better. I think the KPIs, good retention and stuff, it depends of the genre, what is good and bad, and it's like pretty like self-evident information in such a way. But if you really want to have beneficial metrics, you should go really deep and try to visualize what the players are doing.
I want to say just a couple words. Obviously, I don't know personally much about the metric stuff, except that obviously we're in a good situation that we get the basic visibility quite easily. So what we measure and what we're really like interested in is just how much players play the game, how they experience it, and we're just mostly just using as much or gathering data to figure out how to make better and more fun games, and that's what we focus a lot on. At least as a programmer and developer, I like to think that.
Yeah, I think KPIs can be, when you start going deep, it can be the Alice in Wonderland hole that you'll never ever come out of, because you begin to just track everything. So I think it depends on what KPIs you've set yourself, what's important. It might be player retention, or it might be player reviews. Actually, you might say, we just care about X, Y, Z. And I think KPIs are only useful if you are prepared to change course when you actually learn from them. It's great tracking everything and going KPIs and dashboards and things are going up and things are going down, but if you don't change course and it doesn't inform what you're doing, then they then become a little bit redundant. So I would say you wouldn't have to track everything. Track what is going to be most important to you pre-launch, launch, your first 6 months, and then whatever your development plan is, change course or go make something better if you've not done it the first time round.
Just a quick thing on that. Thing is, for us, it's really ask question first and then gather data. Because if you just gather as much data as you think and you try to analyze this, it just leads to madness. So don't do that. Just first ask question what do you want to see and to track in your game, and then gather data about that and get answers. But if you just gather data randomly and just get some kind of random KPI or whatever, you will just you will to be able to tell pretty much anything out of this gathering, so it's not useful.
As an indie game developer, I was going to say KP what, but no, actually, we're using Steam Spy. We've done our research. We know our competition, or as I prefer to call them, similar games. We've done all of that, but our bet is to just have a very strong game that talks to that challenges the player's intelligence. We believe people still care. They want games that challenges them. And yeah, I agree with what you've said. Actually, it's where I was going. It's you said the same. You need to be ready to adapt. For us, even before having any data, we still don't have data yet, but before having any data, it has been a journey of discovering what worked for people and what didn't work. And even in this prototyping phase, we had to realize some things, that some design ideas were good, some design ideas were bad. So I can only imagine what will happen in the long tail when we have a product and now we have to find new ways, to touch other people.
And what about the support for? Oh, sorry.
Actually, I just wanted to mention one quick thing that surprising thing, that even if you're making a game that is where the monetization is not tied to how long the players play the game, like on mobile platforms often is, what is really actually quite important is to still measure the retention and all that, because it's still a good way to figure out how much the players actually love your game.
So unfortunately, we have, I think, time for a couple of questions, which I'm sure are going to be interesting because it's more about support for developers. So right now at Epic, we are having a lot of initiatives with funds, with investors, publishers, etc., trying to help developers get the right connections. I know that some of you are looking for publishers, tell me if I'm wrong, or have already been there looking for funding, etc. So the question is, how do you see the future, like with all this saturation with the market? Did you ever apply to some funding? Do you think there is a future? Can that help developers? Like some advices, maybe?
There is a good talk from Devolver. It's called, sorry for the word, it's Do You Need a F-Word Publisher? Which is, it's actually very interesting. It's not something which is bad, to be honest here. But it's actually explained, when you're talking about publishing and marketing and making your game visible, it's really important to actually ask questions like, what do I need? Do I need some kind of marketing? Will I need some kind of trailer or something? Or how do I contact the press and this kind of thing? So this is a good talk to see on YouTube. It's very, I think it was, do I need a fucking publisher or something like this? But it's very interesting. And for us, we did go, for example, on early access. And there was also a good talk from the guy from Subnautica. And they did have a huge, successful early access. And he said something which is really important. If you decide to go live, like making a Kickstarter or an early access, or it used to be Greenlight or beta on mobile, on this kind of thing, it's really like making a show. If you're doing that, you're actually making a show of your game. So you have to be ready to actually have some people full-time working on that and making sure that if you go early access, if you go live in some way, even if the game is not finished, you will have to talk a lot to your community. You will have to have very frequent updates and lots of extra content, because it's a show. They don't just want to see a boring game development, which is, it can take time. It can be very boring at some point. So they don't want to see that. They just want to see a game that moves. And in some way, you have to create this effect by yourself. So if you plan to address and to market the game by yourself, you should be aware that it really takes lots of time. If you don't do that, publishers are really useful, because it's not something that we cannot afford today to release a game without any kind of marketing help or any kind of publisher help. It's really a very risky situation. You cannot afford to have 2 years of development and just say, we'll see what happens. You will have to, if you don't do that alone, you should, yes, definitely ask for help. I think someone before says the same thing on a talk. It's really making sure that you get the help for this kind of difficult things.
Yeah, I can only agree with that. We, by the way, we're still looking for a publisher, and the way we've seen a publisher so far was we need someone crazy enough to publish a game that's hard to sell. So yeah, actually Devolver, why not? Yeah, it would be a good one for us. But maybe something more useful to you guys. It's funny how in the indie development scene, how many among you are indie developers or consider themselves indie developers? Yeah, don't be shy. Okay. Cool. It's funny how often we think, you know, funding-wise, of how much money I need to survive for the next month, and we don't do often enough two things, which is first, I think you said that in your talk. Think about what happens after you finish the game, because you still need to pay your rent after the game is on Steam. You know. It probably won't be a big hit in the first week, so you need to prepare for that. But also, when you talk to a publisher, put yourself in their shoes. You know, they want you to have a plan, and especially they want to fund something that they can sell. You know, they usually don't want to fund you to survive for your next internal milestone. That's not a product, you know. So I'm always surprised how rarely we do that as indies. So yeah, you need to start having a plan, being very realistic, and retro planning. It's over.
Yeah, unfortunately we're a little bit over. I mean, so many interesting topics, and I mean, you guys have so much to share. So we must be cutting now completely.
No, you can wrap up. We are like 10 minutes over. We're killing it.
Okay, so overall, you believe that the indies should try applying for funds, like for looking for publishers, everything. But did you, for example, have some negative experience, something that you could just shortly share, you know, or just any advice to give here to the audience? Just like for a last thought.
My final advice is please think big numbers. Just because you're an indie studio doesn't mean that you shouldn't be asking for £1 million to make your game. It will help you with the long tail. It will help you feed your team. It will help you do crazy great things to continue keeping your product alive, to get it to market and beyond. So yeah, to your point, David, think big numbers. Don't be afraid to ask for those big numbers, because you have to survive and make your game and market it and do everything. And yes, then if you get to that moment where you decide, am I going to go this alone and do it in-house? Am I going to a publisher? Having those funds helps that decision.
Well,
you're hired.
Yes, it's really making sure that you don't think about the release date is not the end of your game. So when you release a game, you have to actually market it, and it can last for a few months after the release date. So it's not about making surviving until the release date. It's surviving so you can make a second game. It's really different. So make sure that if you get fundings, and which is a good thing, we did have fundings also in France, special kind of fundings for our games, and this is really useful because it gives you a little bit more space to make sure that you push your game on the market, but you can actually support it for some time, and making sure that the long tail actually happens because you're not dead in between. So making sure that yes, think about making your second game and not finishing this one, and funding should be thought in this way. So don't hesitate to ask a little bit more. That's no shame for that. And yes, we about bad experience. I don't want to name anyone here, but yes, when you're beginning in this market on mobile, on PC, on console, they will probably take a huge cut on your revenues, especially on mobile. So don't hesitate to negotiate. Even if it's your first game, we are not sure. Maybe it will be a hit. We don't know. So make sure that you always negotiate, even if you're a newcomer in the market. They will probably ask you for 60 or 70% of your revenue, which is not a good idea. Don't do that. As I said, you have to survive for your second game. It's not about releasing one. Just survive and make more.
Last one thought.
I've been now lately talking with quite a few publishers and investors, and in general, I would hope that the discussion would go a bit away from KPIs, because for me, I do understand that for an investor who is not probably a game developer by himself, he is used to see Excels and numbers and KPIs he can understand and stuff. But if you have good KPIs, it's like sort of like self-evident decision to bet on that. So I think it's a bit unfair to ask good KPIs before someone invests or someone trusts you to sign a publishing deal. I would like to see more investors and publishers who believe on something. They have vision that I believe that this genre of games or this type of gameplays would work in the future. I bet on that. I don't care about the KPIs. We will fix the KPIs later.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that we took all your time. I mean, there's so many topics, and these guys have so much to share. So I maybe made a lot of questions. So I hope you guys enjoyed the panel, and maybe you guys are going to be free to answer some questions later here from the audience. So, I mean, they're going to find you somewhere. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.